try to get as many as we can and focus a little bit. Ms. Tran, are you online? I see your name.
I'm trying to get it set up. Sorry about
No,
that.
you're fine. I just need to look at it. You know, let the record reflect all members of the city council present. And we'll go through the work session. We'll follow that up with the regular meeting. Before the regular meeting ends, we'll go into executive session, discuss personnel matters. Based on what I know at this point, I would anticipate that one being fairly, long. So we'll be in there for a minute or two, and then we'll come back out and whatever decisions, if any, are made, we'll come back out and read them, and then we'll adjourn. So let's start with the regular section. On the minutes for March 9th, regular session and the work session, are there any issues or concerns as written? Ms. Knight? Ms. Dean?
No.
Ms. Tran?
No issue?
Ms. Brown? New business is going to be the approval of the flock camera service agreement in the amount of $2,750 from the 2014 SPLOST category. Equipment for camera in the district, basically the Old Town Mall, and authorize Maryland to execute the agreement and any other related documents. You've got that as part of the regular section. That's what we talked about. One of the local communities has it for flock cameras. This is us just having one out there so we can get a little bit of an idea of what's going on. Any issues with the agreement as is been written? Ms. Knight? Ms. Tran? Any agreement with, or any issues with the flock camera agreement for Old Town Mall? Ben?
No issue?
Okay. And then in the normal work session, we're going to talk about flock cameras in general, and I think that'll get a lot more interesting. All right. This one will be 2014 SPLOST. We'll pull that from there. Approval for a contract for low engineering for the scope of work services. So this is where we've got a company writing some scope of work for us in the amount of $2,625 from the 2014 SPLOST. And the category is going to be for facility improvements. So there's specifically 4 projects that we want them to look at and to be able to write a scope of work for us. One is the raised median on Morrow Road, raised medians on Morrow Road. And I'm assuming that is more inclusive than just the little one that's out there, but talking about slowing some traffic down on Morrow Road. We've had major issues. We know we've got people like Goody that end up with them in their yard on a regular basis, and we've talked about that for decades. And we've had master plans laid out, including one on the wall back here for Pro Ashley, but we've never implemented. So now we want to take a step back, write some scope of work, and see if we can get some things to work. 6399 Murphy Drive, placemaking. We talked 6 months ago probably about a little bridge going into Northridge condos. There's a bridge that's over there now is destroyed, for lack of a better word. We do own it in that section, and basically replace it with a fairly common, nice-looking bridge, and do some little landscaping out there. That is a scope of work with that movie. Then 5900 Reynolds Road, multi-path connection. That's coming off of that section where that little park is back there, going over the Westwood Way, going over the development park.
Connecting the parking lot to the existing
The parking lot, and however it's going to be raised on the platform, whatever it's going to be. So getting that as a scope of work. And then pass system maintenance. This is going back into the original pass system and making it so that it's cleaned up on either side. Open us up some visual corridors in there where it's getting a little bit tight. Maybe do some daylighting in there to really make it pop. Not to be confused with that at a later date, hopefully coming soon, where we'll get into some landscaping ideas of what we can plan. Give us some nice little color. Give us a little bit of that.
Yes, and to that end, Mayor, I do want to clarify that the scope of work at the end of Murphy does not include landscaping. It's just clearing and cleaning it up and putting the bridge in for the next step, which would be landscaping, which we can do ourselves depending on what you want to see back there.
So that's in the amount of $2,625, and you've got a section on that. Questions, comments on that proposal? Ms. Knight?
No question.
Ms. D?
For the path system?
Well, these are the scope of work for them, and the
So-
past system's just coming up with a scope of work to clean that up.
Yeah,
Give us
when you
better-
say clean up, what do you mean? Cut out trees or what?
Yeah, well, it'll be a combination of trees, grubbing, clearing out, giving us 15 feet on either side. So when you're walking through there, you know, remember when we did it originally, the reason it was all cleared out was because the equipment took that much room to be able to lay this stuff in there. Well, over time, it's kind of grown up. And now as you're peeking around corners, it makes people a little nervous. And we want to take it a little bit back to that park setting where, just like the park out here, you can stand anywhere in this park and watch your children, whether you're walking on the path or not. Not cut down everything. We're not trying to salvage pine trees here. Good solid oaks and things like that make it nice. But we're not bulldozing everything either. So something in between to make it usable. Remember, there's a 10-acre section back there that was designed to be a park in the first place. Some of this is going to have some big trees. We want to keep those. And then some of it is pretty scrappy, you know, and that makes people nervous. So, you know, you shouldn't be nervous on that path. You just shouldn't. Now that we don't have the people hanging out down there, hopefully. Is that right, Tate? Sean?
You know, we have some little native plant life back there too, you know.
Come get it. You're welcome to come get it.
Well,
Eradicate that.
well, and the stuff that's,
Yeah,
not
I
surprising
think
either.
it's along like the creek and all of that, but, you know.
Yeah, you
not
got to
too
be
far.
careful about the creek, because remember that was originally a water.
Beautiful little things.
But if we clean it up first,
Yeah.
and then start to think of it in nodes, right, there's different sections, however you want to call it. If one section people want to go in and put dogwoods and say it's cherry trees or whatever, and really make it pop and look nice. And then let's just say somebody wants native stuff, native azaleas, native, you know, whatever.
Although we'll learn from our neighbors at the nature center that native azaleas are too popular.
Because people still love it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we don't want that, but
No,
but there's more than enough space out there if you take linear footage. We could do this for years, you know, but there's no reason we can't make it look a lot more like Callaway Gardens where people want to walk down there and take pictures and things like that. And right now, that's not happening. It's all green or it's gone. So we can do better on the visual, but right now it's more about safety. We want people to be happy. Other questions on it? Approval for the contract for shear structural in the amount of $2,200 from the 2014 SPLOST assessment of the boardwalk deck at the district. For those who've been back there, you know, the scrub and the other stuff is now pretty much down. We still got some things on the mall side, still got some things in that creek corridor, you know, that's still up for debate until we get that solved with the county. But certainly you can see it. And then there's some yellow bands that have been put around some trees on the GDOT side, which we know we have a permit for, and some subjectivity as to what that totally means, but at least maybe from the sound barrier to the creek itself, if they open that up for the first time in ever, at least since the mall was built, the view corridor at I-75 to outside of the mall plus us is extremely valuable, and that would be a really good win. But now you start to see, you know, the deck, and we know it's got structural support in there. We know we lost at least one. So rather than guessing, you know, it appears that the water that's from the downspouts over the years has not been routed where it's supposed to go, and therefore it's been flowing wherever it wants, and it's at least destabilized something. So now we're going to get a professional structural engineer to tell us what we really need to do next. And you know, that makes sense before we go out there and start changing things. But we know the structural steel in there will support it, but the top part looks pretty bad. And we just got to keep moving at a pace that makes sense. Any questions related to that? Ms. Knight?
No question.
Ms. Dean?
I do have a question regarding the the additional services, I noticed that it says if the work hasn't been completed within 12 months of the date, due no fault of the consultants or whatever, it's on the, under the hourly rate.
Yeah.
Will it be, is there any reason why that project should go into that length of time? None whatsoever?
No.
Right, okay.
'Cause, I mean, if you crawl back up in there, I mean, there's some subjectivity. The top looks terrible, there's no question
Yeah.
that. The steel is in phenomenal shape. The areas that look like they fell, it does look like the concrete that's holding them up gave way. You know, and to be honest, it's the same person who basically, or the same company that built the stuff that fell apart back here. So the same building techniques he used, it fell apart somewhere else, it fell apart here. So we know kind of the reasoning behind it. We also have an idea of what it took to fix it. Most of it was replacing the top. In this case, let's look at what the structural means.
So the assessment surely should take 12 months.
Yeah, so the only thing the assessment I think comes in quick. The only thing that worries me about wood replacement is the price of lumber is 180% higher than it was, 9 months ago. Then the question comes down, is that same for, on top of the red house, when we've got that different building material, it's more of a plastic lumber, you see it on the back of the tourist center, and you see it there. Normally, the price of that is, at least double the price of lumber. Well, if lumber went up that high, did the other stuff. If the other stuff stayed similar, then really what you'd almost want to do is recommend that you go with the lifelong plastic, because you'd be better off. So there might be, some change in it, but we need to just do a little research. But first, let's figure out what's wrong. And like I said, it's cleaning up, it's beginning to look good, better. And it should dry out in terms of that.
Would there be, could we buy the wood now?
I wouldn't until we know exactly what we want to put back and what does that all include. But I would do some price shopping.
That's,
Truman
yeah.
House, Billy?
Mr. Mayor, I talked to the contractor who did the work on the red house in Long Beach, and we were discussing the cost of composite versus wood, and the pricing is pretty much almost in line. What you pay for a piece of wood now is almost the same price that you would pay for composite. I think there's like
If you could get the composite for a similar number, take it, because you could
Take
obviously
the
see.
durability.
Yeah, and
Durability.
so, because that's one of the reasons why the city manager and I were having a discussion about the composite. because
It
the price-
hurts when you have to price one that big, but, and then over on the left side, we got one remaining light pole. But back there was also a place that, the businesses and the community could be on that back deck. But the street furniture was taken off. There had to be at least one or two additional poles back there. Where did they go? I mean, whatever it is, it's obviously been removed.
And, like some of the benches were relocated, like over near the garden. I remember, so, whatever we have, obviously, it
Well,
would
as long
still
as the
be in.
city still got them somewhere, I don't
So,
think.
I
We
do
wouldn't
know
throw them
there are
away.
some benches in the warehouse. I don't know if the poles for the lights are back there, but I do know that I've seen benches. in the
Well, and
warehouse.
all the poles were just like right over the edge, so they weren't on the actual deck side, they were on the other side of the deck, and they were as a part of a beam or something, and that would have been in there. The original plans will show it, but there certainly was more than one, because we wanted it just as friendly on the back side as it was on the front side. And I know this is extremely early, but I spent a reasonable part of the afternoon talking to a gentleman over there who has, we'll see, but he has an interest in giving us a letter of intent on a painting wine space. Interesting. Paint and sip or something like that.
Yeah.
What was that? Paint,
Except the difference here is, I don't want them to just bring their own bottle, because they don't make any money on that. I want to sell them an alcohol license and make real money. We got to figure out first if we can do it. Second, we got to figure out how to make that work. But somebody's at least knocking on your door, which is more than what they've done in the past. And all of those, at least in the short term, if we can make any type of money, the idea is to at least recover. But anyway, any other issues related to that? Ms. Ma'am, any issues?
No issue.
All right, moving on, then we have, It's Electric, which is one of the city's newest businesses, I believe.
Yes, sir, it is. It is.
And is that the one that picked up the Macy's space?
Yes, sir.
I noticed they started putting a chain link fence around the back. Was that expected?
Yes, yes, sir.
All right, that's kind of, but, so yes, we're gonna give some business, hopefully to the new folks. And when you walk outside of the Morrow Center, the tourist center there, Morrow Center, Conference Center, the lights don't work. So we want to get them fixed. It's dark out there. And it appears the fixtures we have aren't made anymore, the ballasts aren't made anymore. So it's a retrofit of the lights we have in the amount of $2,456. And you've got a copy of the other two proposals that were laid out. Any questions with that proposal this night? Ms. Dean?
No.
Ms. Tran? Mr.
Nothing.
Excellent. All right.
And remember, Mayor, this is where you want to talk about the possible addition, CNC increase
Yeah, might as well have fun with that one. Okay.
for the Lake Harbor sidewalk project.
Okay, so this is a agenda add. This project's been in the works for a long time, and it deals with the sidewalks from, I guess, Meadowbrook down to Pleasant Valley or Peacock. We know that the bid was originally $307,000, and actually $393,326 to be exact, and it was awarded to CNC. We've had issues with theoretical right-of-way or easements being obtained. And since that time period, the cost of materials has went up. And they're submitting us basically the increased cost. Now, there's several things we can do. We can terminate the contract and not build the sidewalks. We can absorb the contract and try to get it executed so that we get it done. If we continue to wait around, I can't imagine the material cost is going to go down. We might even end up with even greater numbers. So you have the proposal here in front of you. It's a little bit hard to read. So when you see a number in here that says 524, 734, 50, that is not correct. And help me out, City Manager, I think that's right, right?
That's right.
So then,
So, yeah, I want,
the new number should be
400
460, 826.
well, if the total after the increase will be 457,234. Because you take the 393, that, 393,326 that was approved in the August 11 minutes that you all have, and you add that 63,908, and you get 457,234.
And it would be very understandable to understand that all these numbers in front of us don't add up or come out to anything. Because you got the line 25 there and a few other things like that. But as long as we just remember what the number is, 457,234. And life isn't getting any better. So
And
we're
that will be
trying
in the
to pull
motion.
through.
You'll need to read that number in the motion, or I can read it for you, and you can ask for the approval as read.
And we just got to bite the bullet and get it done. So the main issue is there's a price increase, but the secondary issue behind it is get the sidewalk up. And that's really the answer. If we got to shut down half a lane and stay in it, debating moving on it, yeah, it's annoying, but, we just got to get it done. Any issues with that this night? Ms. Dean?
No issue.
Ms. Trainer?
No question.
Okay. That was easy stuff. All right. Ordinance 21-02. And this is basically making a recommendation to modify how the Planning and Zoning Board appoints its chairperson, how it currently is actually appointing its vice chairperson and giving it the opportunity to appoint the secretary from their own officers if they don't either like or trust a member of the city to provide that service for them. And basically that would be a first reading. It takes two to make that happen. Floor discussion on that, Ms. Knight.
So we're, I guess, make sure I'm understanding this correctly. I was looking at it saying the mayor appointing the board chair.
I did.
Yeah, it just sounded like you said something, you said that and then a little something different, so I'm just wanting to be clear.
Yes, in this particular case, the planning and zoning board is appointed by the entire city council. Okay? Every member of it, all five. That doesn't change. The only difference is we're asking for, this body, specifically me in this case, to appoint the chairman to that board from the members that are appointed. They can choose their own vice chairman, and then from a secretary standpoint, which right now is Marty, but if they don't want Marty, one of the members of their own board is if they want to choose somebody as their secretary, then we would give them the ability to do that.
So my thoughts are, I think the board is capable of choosing their own chair. That's my thought. There's some benefit to the choice and the option to provide autonomy and leadership for the board. We've appointed the board itself, and the opportunity for the board to choose leadership amongst that group, so that whatever working habits or understanding, sharing of information, it's a provided opportunity for the board to fully realize. So, I mean, if they're choosing the board chair currently, I think that's fine.
Okay. Ms. Dean?
Yeah, I'd like to know, the advantage or disadvantage, why you feel that,
Okay.
instead of, the members choosing their own chair.
Just kind of picking it up in a nutshell, the planning and zoning board is a recommending board to the city law, to us. They make no final decisions whatsoever. Right? So they hear either a request to the city itself, they find additional information, then they make a recommendation to this group. Every member of that board votes. So unlike this board where you need three or somebody's got to have a tie to be able to vote, every member does get to vote. When you look at a board, and let's just look at its totality, if a certain number of people on the city council change over, and if the planning and zoning board was appointed in the correct order, which means only one member of the planning and zoning board would be up once every 5 years, right? So you would only appoint one per year, right? Now in the past, the way that works is if you were not reappointed to your term, you did have the ability to stay in there until your successor was appointed. The city council could have appointed 4 members to the board for unexpired terms 2 weeks ago, a month ago, whenever it was decided. So the idea of basically having it so that we have an aligned interest. So let's say a new group gets elected, and you're still dealing with an old board who have a mindset that may not match yours. All you're really going to do is have a city council that's going to override the entire planning board decisions all the time. And there's no reason for that. Plus, if somebody's going to spend a reasonable amount of effort in the near future, which I think is going to be me, to be able to look at some of the zoning that's currently available in the city and ultimately look at some of the opportunities that are out there. In other words, not so much here in terms of how our code is written, which I think is, in some cases, too restricted to be able to attract development, and in some cases, not restrictive enough to be able to deter things that you're not going to want, right? Which is where we're headed. Then I think I should have the ability to work with somebody who's going to work with me. And if you're not going to work with me, then I've got other options. And that's not just me specifically, John Maple, it's specifically the person in this seat. So if I can choose from 5 people, And I think one of those is gonna work with me at a better rate. Why not? It basically builds continuity. In the event that you don't see it that way, then that relationship's not gonna work exceptionally well. And because it's a recommending body, it doesn't have much to go with it. As far as the additional pieces in terms of appointing a secretary, part of that's simple. We've never had that problem before. But a couple of weeks ago, we get somebody basically calling us out and talking about ethics complaints to somebody who may or may not have anything to do with that. That's the view from the cheap seats. You go, that was uncalled for. So if that employee chooses not to work with you, what do we do about that? So if you're gonna call me names or you're gonna say I'm unethical as an employee, should that person be required to be working for you or not? Good question. So we got professional employees. I'm just saying this gives them an opportunity. So now, here's other reasons why we should do this. Let's assume we take that same point and the city council says, as Ms. Knight would say, choose who you want. Okay, and that's certainly within your ability to do that. But it would be within my ability to appoint a committee that doesn't require me at all. I'll just put 5 people on a committee and I'll walk them through the paces just like I would anyone else. And I'll just simply go around it. So if I can't work with the people I want, then I will choose somebody else. Is it redundant? Yes. Is it necessary? No. But if you've been given good advice and you choose not to take it, I can't help that. So this is a way to try to set it up so we don't have that issue in the future. We've never had that issue in the past. I think we've given them good advice. They, in that recent scenario, didn't take it. That's unfortunate. I can't do much about that. This can fix that, but I still think it's preferable to create a redundant system that I think there are some benefits to that. We could involve the business community in a portion of it, which we're not doing now. I think that would be smart. But I think it's a lot of effort that isn't necessary. Doable, but not necessary.
I hear your point, but looking at it from having to be able to have people to fill those positions and wouldn't want to, what is the incentive? For someone to be on, accept your appointment or, to be on a board.
Well, no different than what was there. We could have put 2 additional people on board if we chose. It was a compromise. I think the compromise was there was some continuity that existed. It was a risk, and we could have chosen somebody else. We didn't. So I don't know that it was because we didn't have the people available who would do it. It was just simply, that's what a compromise does, right? It means we don't necessarily agree, but I'm not expecting you to take over the playing field. And I do think the Planning and Zoning Board is very much, if you have a coach who calls a play and you just won't follow him, and you bench the play.
So, to that point, we have a DDA board as well, so, and a chairperson. So is that going to
Separate
remain,
scenario.
is that going to remain as is, or?
Your URA and your development authority. Your development authority at this point is fairly much mothballed. Right? It just hasn't come into play yet. And it's not to say we don't need people, we did. But for legal reasons, that is an entirely separate file. Mostly based on finances and how they handle properties and opportunities for the city. There's a very, very reason that they're a distinct group of people. Right? Same thing with your URA, a very distinct group of people. Now, we would hope when you appoint people, they have a like-minded interest. You would hope, right? But your Planning and Zoning Board is not a separate entity. It is basically a recommended body to this board. So for us to have some type of influence over it, not only is acceptable, it should be understood. Because when you run through an election, you get the ball. You win, you get the ball. That's how it goes, right? And then it's our job to do the best with it what we can. Whether somebody agrees with us or not, that's up for another election, another day, right? But there's no sense in us not reading from the same page. With the best that we have the potential to deliver. And it still comes back to you anyway, because no matter what goes through there, you're the final decision-making authority. That's not going to be true if you are a DDA. But I would still say the same thing for those groups. I'm not necessarily trying to pick your board. We pick your board, but we're not going to share people too much. But use a little common sense, right? Politics is as much of an art as it is a science, right? We want to move something forward. Right? Nobody's not putting you on a board. You're just changing from one chair to the other chair. It'd be a whole different ballgame if we sat you down and said, we're done. Right? So right now you're just debating as to what chair you think you should serve in versus somebody who is actually elected into a position and is accountable for that decision. And I want the ability to put the best team on the table. And I've said that publicly and 2 weeks ago. I want to put the best opportunity we have on the table using the best people that will work with us the best. And somebody has to say, you specifically? Absolutely. All right, Ms. Tran?
So if we are go, like, say, if we say we lean forward to change to have the mayor appoint the board member, how are we going to do that?
We'll change the code and we'll appoint a chair. It's about that simple. Takes 2
Are
readings.
you saying that we are going to make changes on the ordinance? We have
That's
an
correct.
ordinance to change?
That's what you have in front of you. That is correct.
I think we will, looking that we have the attorney here tonight, we'll get some legal advice on that. I would say table that until we get the legal advice.
Okay. Mr. Clark?
It's fine for me either way, but I think it would have more advantage to pick specifically whoever working with that. I'm more favorable with that.
And as I stated earlier, if you're only replacing one a year, you could actually win a term, and it would take you at least 2 to 3 years if you had a group of folks who weren't agreeing with you. At least 2 to 3 to change that mindset. And I'll also say this, if we have a group of folks and they just sit down and don't do anything for the most part, you know what, it doesn't really matter. True. Somebody could be chairman, they could meet 4 times a year, hold up space. It's happened. Look at the last 5 years. It's highly probable. Right? So if we had no intention of doing anything, it really doesn't matter. That is not my intention. My intention is you have to look at the code you have. We have had almost no new construction in a decade. We are bleeding our ability to have tax value improved, which means we need new construction. We need higher density. We need it to be of quality. If our code's either running them off, that's still not going to work. If they can build junk, it's not going to work. Right? And if you look at the people you have, and you read these texts, no different than reading, the one that we just saw here a minute ago for the sidewalk project. That is gobbledygook with all kinds of numbers on it that don't make a lot of sense. Right? So now let's go into the code, the zoning code specifically, and have somebody define what it is that we're telling them they can build versus what it is that they can't build. And then show me an example. Well, all of your examples are going to be well out of date. You know? So let's assume instead of it being a negative, we look at it as a positive. We want to go out And let's use Woodstock for an example, let's use some stuff that's over there off of North Avenue. They built some really nice stuff. You know, it's gonna be in a price range where it adds value to the city, and even if they call it high-density development, you're gonna want one, and you wouldn't mind if somebody built one next to you. Odds are somebody's gonna say we're too poor to locate here. I disagree with that. Right? But until you have a group of people who've laid eyes on it, who have seen other places that are just as unique as we are, do it, actually do it, right? Then now we can use our staff to go behind the scenes and deal with their community development department and other things. So what's the code that you had to make that happen? Because I guarantee you it doesn't look like yours, okay? We can do several things. We can add it as an appendix to tell you an example of what we really want. So for those folks that are freaking out a little bit, that it gives them a chance to use your back door. And what does your back door mean? You show me that project. I come in there and I submit a master plan to you, and you approve the master plan as it is specific, right? And that becomes the code for that property. It doesn't change the code on anything else. It just says for that specific property, you are agreeing to build that specific project, okay? But without teasing them with what you want, we come up with a different answer. And that answer says, you spend tens of thousands of dollars coming up with an idea, and I'll tell you whether I like it or not. Multiplied by 5 or 6 people, including staff, that's not gonna happen, right? So you gotta have something a little bit better. You have to show them what it is you want. They will see it for themselves. I'm very, very comfortable they'll reach similar conclusions. And you don't have to tell them. They'll tell you that we'll do the homework behind the scenes to get what we want. And you say the same thing residentially and commercially. It all comes out the same thing. But, you know, later we're gonna talk about, you know, money. You know, we gotta get more of it. We can't tax people. That's a devaluing scenario. It dries up your property value in terms of your tax. So it's only when that new house is built, that new business is built from the ground up, or we get enough demand where we fill in the back spaces that we already have, that we actually make real money. How are we gonna do that? If what we had was working, we'd have had something. I mean, Popeyes is coming, but you see my point, right? So this takes the entire board, and it takes, you know, a change in how you do business. At least look at it. You can decide to continue to do exactly what you're doing if you want to, right? But once you see it, I believe you're gonna change your mind.
Term limits for the board is
Can I say something?
Sure. Dorothy's got the floor. Let her finish.
term limits for the board.
Okay, let's go ahead, Dorothy, and I will be after you.
We don't have term limits at this point, even though we had a number of people who've been around for a while. But think of it like this, we can pretty much guarantee you have an opportunity to have a term limit, because we don't have to reappoint you,
Mhm.
right? And, you know, at some point, just being kind,
Well,
people
right,
get
I mean,
tired, right? They get
yeah.
tired, and they want to be helpful. We should move them into a different chair to allow them to do that. And I think we're starting to make some changes there where we're looking for some energy.
Mhm.
Not just us telling somebody what to do, but we want you to do the homework and have fun at it, we hope, and bring us back something where you're excited about it. Not as a, you know, like homework at school, right? Not that kind of exciting, but for real.
But my point is that if council does not want to renew that term of a particular board member, that's the council's.
That's correct. You don't have to continue the term, because it technically expires. You know, so at that point, you can hold them in the spot until you find somebody you want, right? In other words, you know, John's term is expired. I don't have to replace him on that day. I can wait until I find a community member who appears to fit the need, and you make the changes at that point. Very nicely, right? We didn't make knee-jerk reactions. We could have replaced board members on day one. We let a year pass, made a change in a couple, compromised on a couple, right? So I think the world of working with people is real, you know? But yeah, it has to be reciprocal, just the way it is. And then I know this is gonna lead into the next section, which we're gonna talk about in terms of, I think that's on there. Are we talking about the moratorium?
Well, it's
The work
a
session?
work session item, but remember, we couldn't vote, have the first
Right,
reading
right, right.
until.
But we're kind of leading one into the other, but if we just stated the first ordinance, yeah, and Van, go ahead.
Mayor, before we move to the next item, could I add something into this discussion, to this topic?
Go ahead.
The good news is that we have 2 new board members in the planning and zoning. We just have majority of the council voted for by the mayor appointed. So changing who will be in the chairperson is not going to change the entire board. And the board have to work together among, it's not only the chairperson working with the mayor and council, but the entire board. The chairperson won't be able to make absolute decision unless if he gets the majority of agreed from the entire board members. So I would say that's just the comment that I want to add to this conversation.
Mr. Clark, good? All right. We'll have an executive session, as we talked about earlier. Item number 2, go in and continue on some of the same thought. It's a moratorium on your mixed use. I know it says multifamily, but it really should say mixed use. Fair?
No, I mean, so you don't want it to be just a residential issue?
I don't think it can be.
It currently raises
Yeah, I'm saying,
It
we
says
have to change
multifamily.
that.
Yeah, so it would have to change.
Because it's the only place you could really do the mix of use. Right? And it's all over the board. Right? So, you know, it's like, we came up with good ideas, and we just simply gave it the next spot. Where my concern is we can always spend a tremendous amount of time worried about each individual line item. But when you get tested on this, you're now going to assume that the court system is going to read your line items to their thought process. They're not. Right? And what they're going to look at is, does the code itself, you know, is arbitrary, capricious? You know, is it something you can do? And a lot of times you end up settling. And when you end up settling, you end up getting half the dog you didn't want, and everybody tells you how great that is. And then you say, well, we settled. Well, no. You know, the best way to have a discussion is before somebody's filed a permit.
So, at this time, you're saying your intention really was to review mixed use, not so much multifamily? Because we've been talking about multifamily, and I had mentioned before, like, you know, we don't have multifamily zoning
You don't.
currently, so.
Well, you've got some
the
existing
intention
zoning
to
for
just kind of
apartments, but that would,
tweak it, and we need to be talking about something else now?
well, it might be a combination of both. Let me back it a couple reasons why. As long as you're fixing one, this is expanding on it, and maybe that's there. So let's just take the apartment complex across the street. Severely dated, everybody would agree, right? From the 60s. Right? So that guy's got a certain amount of cash flow on that property, which is pretty good. He has no incentive in the world to do anything to that property for the next 15, 20 years. But it's a nice one. He's cleaned it up more than most, but eventually it will devalue back to where it was. We pretty much know that. He's got a lot of land, and, you know, we could offer him some density bonuses to be able to start to make some changes on that property. That's a good one for the existing true apartment zoning classification. Right? But when you have discussions about mixed use, and in that mixed use invariably is multifamily, whether you call it side-by-side detached, for lease, for sale, it all kind of comes into that same mix. There's a lot of things that were done back in the day that are severely outdated now. Northridge condominiums, for example, would never pass your code by today's standard. Woodstone is severely outdated. But what are they? Well, if you see some of the things in Atlanta where they're saying, oh, I'm going to put a retail space down below you, and then you do everything above. I think the fire chief would agree, you know, depending on what that retail space is down below it. You know, your cost to construct, especially if you're doing a restaurant, is so great that you may never build.
I probably need to say one thing. So if at the onset, our intention was to look at multifamily.
Correct.
Because we talked about, you know, Woodstone, Northridge, Bloom, Oxford Townhomes, and then the duplexes.
Right.
Okay. So if you were going to change it so fundamentally to make it mixed use, it may bear upon how we advertise it. So that may change the schedule to hear it, because if the public hearing was for multifamily and you're changing it to mixed use, we're gonna have to re-advertise.
We've been having a different
Yeah,
conversation.
and I'm not saying that it's not what you wanna do, just remember, it may change the schedule. So even though technically an ordinance, you know, you can change it right up to that second, but when you're having a public hearing about a totally different subject,
Well, why can't we do them both? So we don't have to change anything, let's just continue with the one we have.
so we just add another one?
Yes.
Okay, that's
Because the
doable.
first one is almost all existing. Every project in there is existing. What trades could you provide to be able to get somebody to make a reinvestment in? Probably reasonable, mostly densities. I think that would be fair. Your mixed use has very much components of that in it as well. And I got a feeling if you're gonna get another complex of some sort, I think you're gonna see it in your mixed use zoning first. That doesn't mean somebody might not pick up an existing RS-80 property and try to get it turned into a mixed use.
So you're talking about mixed use, new construction?
Correct. But let's just say we did an apartment zoning, let's just take the property right across the street from Haney Elementary, right? We know the property is undervalued and for sale. That would certainly be one that somebody would make a pitch for. The property that Ms. Huey had over on Lee Street just came up for sale, 10 acres, $270,000. That's a heck of a price, assuming it's not swamp, right? Those would be places where folks are gonna want those some pretty high densities, and you got apartments right across the street, or you've got duplexes right on the corner. How you gonna make that work? And you wanna sit there and go, good point. But I got a feeling that would be more mixed use, because Lee Street should have some type of retail component because of the drive corridor there that we think would work.
So again, yeah, so it'd be two moratoriums.
But I think that's still the same thing, is you have to drive what it is you want. right? Back into your codes from there. We managed to create a hodgepodge of codes that's almost unbuildable. Yeah. And we certainly are interpreting it more than one way. We already know that. Okay? And that is arbitrary and capricious, I think, Chrysler, is that right? So if we all can't even agree on how to interpret it, how does anybody else interpret it? And the way that normally works is the person who's applying for the permit interprets it his way with his legal counsel. And then me and you go to court, and they tell us what their interpretation is, which is usually significantly different than either one of ours. And then, what is it, still 97% of all civil cases settled? Which basically means we get half a dog. Or the judge gives us a warning that tells us we're about to lose, in which case we thankfully accept half a dog. Close, fair?
I think it's the conversation that we should be having. I just want to make sure that we're having the same conversation you're having.
Well, I've got several in my head, so.
And we know that.
When whoever else
Because
is in there
previously,
will
we
stop.
weren't having the same conversation that you were having. So, you know, just for clarity's sake, you know, now we are bringing in that mixed use component. And I do understand the high density component to mixed use, which is so popular. So I just want to make sure that we're all having the same conversation.
All right. Good. I'll try to get the other two people in my mind to stop. Ms. Dean, questions?
No, I'm good with that, it's been clear.
All right. Ms. Tran, questions?
No question.
Mr. Quah? No question. Annual City Council Planning Meeting is scheduled for April 24th. Do we know the times on that?
That's up to y'all. Y'all wanna come here at 8, 9, 8, 9?
Sounds like someone's asleep.
The sooner we come in, the sooner we can leave.
Ooh.
Yard work.
Says the retired.
Night owls.
Ah, that's good. What about, say, 9?
Nine
Nine's
sounds
a little bit-
fine.
Why don't we try to run from, say, 9 to 3? It gets in a little tight if we do box lunches or something like that, so we can just let these people roll. On average, they got about an hour apiece. And you know, depending on who's got what presentation.
Yeah, no, I was, yes, and depending on how much feedback they get.
Good point. I imagine some will get more than others. So you good with that? Say from 9 to 3?
Okay. Van,
Are we gonna have the,
Mayor,
yes,
the jam,
I'm sorry, band, 9 to 3, on the 24th planning session?
Yes,
Okay.
that's what,
Gotta kind of look at the spot. I know we keep deferring to this, but this is a terrible place to hold an informal meeting.
Well, yeah, typically we'd do this in the boardroom, but
Right.
y'all probably aren't gonna be comfortable around the table in the boardroom.
Wait till everybody gets their shots.
So we
I'm
could,
good. What about at the
Morrow Center.
Morrow Center where we,
Mark, Center,
In the
Breakout
lounge.
room.
Yeah.
Give us something so we can, and that way it's a little more informal, otherwise, it just doesn't seem to work right. All right. All right, this one, the fly camera proposals, there was some discussion about what would it cost to do those camera systems citywide. And to be honest, the proposal, you got to kind of price it. So you see one proposal at 12 cameras for $33,000, another proposal for 20 cameras at $55,000, and that's annual. Okay, I like catching bad guys just like the rest of
Pedro's
us.
here, Mayor, to.
Oh, by all means, before I give you my.
I can answer any question.
Do you
Yes,
need the podium, Pedro? No, okay. Okay, very good.
Mr. Mayor and Council, thanks, I'll be brief. I had an opportunity last week to travel the city with a flock representative, and we mapped out the city, what we thought would ring the city for anybody coming and going. So again, yes, you do have two proposals. The first proposal is for cameras coming into the city, one camera. Okay, the second proposal is just put additional camera on the other side of the street for cars leaving the city. So, you know, if you ask yourself, which one's better? Well, obviously the two camera system, the $55,000 one would be the optimum. But to catch cars coming into the city, we wouldn't know when they leave, but we know when they enter. And that would be the lower amount, which is $33,000.
Or you could opt to only see them leave, right?
Only see them leave. It's whatever we want. Okay, so if you look real quick, cameras, we got both north end, south end of 54. We got both east end and west end of Mount Zion. We've got traffic coming in from Oxford, Lake Harbin, Old Rex. We put a pin up around BC Haney for people coming or going on Morrow Road, coming in the city. And also on Phillips Drive, somewhere right around the Beverly Hills entrance, somewhere right in there. But excellent system. The rep wanted to point out, if we were to make a move, anything that we wanted to put on Jonesboro Road 54 is a state route, which requires a permit. Permit's a lengthy process. She says usually about 6 weeks. To her, that's long. I don't know if that's long to us, but she said there's a way around that if we put cameras on existing infrastructure that we own as the city, meaning the green mast poles, I think we own those. But if we attach it to the mast poles, permit's not required. There's no hole digging or anything like that.
Do we know like how big it is, how much it weighs?
I don't have the exact size, but she said that the rep would come out and look, or the installer would come out and look to make sure that it would work. Completely solar. Everything is held in the cloud for 30 days. After 30 days, it disappears. But 30 days is, as a national average, is enough time for us to do investigatory looking into the situation. But I want to throw out some numbers here real quick. So Cobb County, they were kind of the first in the area to do this. It's a Six Flags area. The Thornton Road area was really a tough area for them. So in 1 year, they put 13 cameras in that area. So calendar year 2018-2019 reporting period, they saw a decrease of 64% overall in crime, 52% decrease in robberies, 21% decrease in residential burglaries, non-residential burglaries, which is the ones we get a lot around here, like the at-night copper thieves kind of guys, 63% decrease, 64% decrease in entering autos, and 13% decrease in stolen vehicles. And I was trying to think of something that we had last year that we did not catch, that this would have caught. When we had the dumpster thief over there in
Oh, yeah.
the old Southern Bonded, I forget what it's called now.
Where the Woodmont property that we just got, we're at Station 32.
The dumpster thieves tearing us up over there, stealing the big dumpsters. Flock camera would have caught him. That's a 2 o'clock in the morning kind of guy. He would have had to come in the city or leave the city. We thought we knew what the vehicle looked like. Flock would have got that guy. But I think it's an excellent system. The rep would say she would come down and brief you all more technical if you had questions. But that's kind of an overview. But that right there is 20 cameras at the $55,000, so just half that. But that's a ring of the city. Now, I looked at it today before I come over just to refresh myself. The only one that I didn't put on there that I looked back and maybe we should have put one was Reynolds Road. I didn't have anything on Reynolds Road. That's a good thoroughfare coming in out of Jonesboro Road, or out of Forest Park.
But in
I can
terms
tell you
of,
where you can put it, right
Yeah.
over there where they're spinning the tires. and
exactly,
everything.
well, that's what,
Sure.
so, as far as escape routes, really, just, you've been here a long time, you've been fighting crime in this area for decades. Are we really looking at Phillips and Oxford, do we really consider those to be the
Lake Harmon
thoroughfare?
is a good one, yeah, and Old Rex Morrow is a good one. Yeah, a lot of traffic travels those at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning because they don't want to go down Jonesboro Road where they think we're at 2 or 3 in the morning.
That's the
Yeah.
street way.
And so we could arguably, you know, because remember, the commitment is only annually, right?
It is annually.
So if like, let's say you wanted to commit to 5 years, 3 years, whatever, and we could collect the data, see how it changes, and then if we feel like it
Oh,
doesn't have
sure.
any impact, you just decide not to continue, right?
Right.
It's that simple.
Now, in our jaunt that day, I did a lot of trying to sell different property groups.
Right.
So, you know, I gave her U.S. Property Group's emails. She's been in contact with them. In the different property groups, they do a big business with the private sector. And that's for a way for us to cut down if the private sector buys these, we just sign MOUs like we did, I think, a couple work sessions ago. We can log into theirs and just use it. But if we keep Walmart, U.S. Property Groups, which has got that whole end of Mount Zion, I don't know the entity that owns the Escobar end in that parking lot, but you know, something on that end of town, they purchase it, we use it for free. It's a way to cut down our price,
If they are willing to sign it.
if they're willing to sign, yes.
Which who wouldn't?
Let me ask you an easy question. Would you rather have a raise or cameras?
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
Would you rather have a raise?
Oh, that's a tough question. A raise.
Just wanted to make sure we had our priorities. So we agree on that. I like the camera system, I do. I think certain areas, you know, if we're leading up to it, and let's just use the Reynolds Road. We know we got people doing crazy stuff
Sure.
on that property, and they've been doing it for a while, and it's very difficult for you to catch. We also know they're driving, you know, so on something like that, I could agree. You know, that's a specific point to solve a specific problem where we already know we got people coming in and out of there anyway. At some point, if our finances improved to the point where we could make people happy and things were headed in a direction. So this would fall in that category of nice, but in that list, I've got a whole lot of other things to solve before I get there. That doesn't mean that maybe we shouldn't strategically look at some. I'm not sure the road system in its entirety, but I need a little bit more specific. I think it would be an easy sell at the dog park. I don't think anybody have a problem with that. Not so sure that Old Rex Morrow is gonna be high on the list.
Understand.
Right, but the subdivision down there that has them, I understand why they, right, in terms of Brookwood. And, well, how many they got over there, 3?
The Brookwood?
Brookwood has one camera.
One.
One camera?
Yes.
Because there's only the one in and out, but now the dog park already has cameras, so would the flock still be beneficial?
Well, the flock would notify us immediately.
Oh, that's right, it's the notification piece.
Well,
Yes.
I would say that obviously if the cameras were good, then we
Yeah.
have to ask ourselves, why are we still doing donuts in the middle of the parking lot?
Because we still have to go back and look at them, we're not notified when it's happening,
Right.
that's.
And then
Right.
the flock camera that's down at Brookwood is at the entrance.
It is.
Mhm.
We kind of understand why they're doing it. they got issues. We've not really been able to address this. Now, we got some solutions, and they haven't exactly, for all the people in Brookwood who still, hope you come see us, we got solutions. You gotta be able to make those solutions happen. Or we need to go see them. Still haven't worked that way either. To be honest, that would be one I'd almost recommend the city pick up. In other words, I understand why your HOA is picking it up, but to be quite honest, isn't that kind of what we're here for?
Yeah, well, I mean,
And I'm not saying let's put
totally-
them in every subdivision, but I'm saying I understand specifically why in that subdivision, and so do you.
well, it's a
So-
hotspot until.
Well, it's a hotspot, and we know the reasons.
Yeah.
And we haven't addressed the solutions on those yet, but we will. But that one, I think should be coming out of our pocket. I know why they did it, I'm glad they did it, it led us to this point, but we ought to pay that bill. That's just being
Don't
fair.
argue.
And I'm not saying make it to everybody else, but I don't know any other subdivision that's having some of the similar transient challenges that
It's
they're.
crazy, correct. No, they're not.
So you would almost pick like Walmart or AMC where we have a lot of breaking and entering, right?
Right.
Yeah. So maybe that's what we ask for is to, if I don't just say every road system, if I said identify 5 spots, what would they be? Our hot spots, our hottest
Walmart.
spots.
Mall, AMC, LA Fitness. We're seeing some action, Ross, Namdaemun.
Why is that, why, 'cause
Internet
that's
autos.
new, right? I mean, that's sort of new for us.
We're just seeing just internet autos breaking into cars. Yeah.
Well, maybe some of that, if we can't convince them to do it on their own, maybe a little cost sharing, I still rather pay half than none, or not the other way around, I'd rather pay none, but, I mean, if we know we're gonna get a return on it, where we might have to be able to catch some people.
Is this something that we can, make sure that the DMO is aware of with regard to those funds? I mean, because that's for the business community, that's something that we,
I think that gets hard with tourism funds.
okay.
And yeah, but
But
like,
safety is a
Oh, yeah, it's big,
component of.
it's big.
it's
But
the
it's-
product development.
It's that
piece.
reoccurring expense thing that
development.
bothers me, is because it's easy to spend and then we keep doing it forever, and, that, you're spending a whole lot more than you think. And it's one thing to say, I'm gonna buy a park bench, and it's an expensive park bench, but I gotta buy it one time. Here,
Right.
this sucks money out of the system, it stays out forever, and we gotta make it up, just flat out.
Just, partnerships and the potential, benefit to the business community.
So maybe
We
that's
have
it.
a board that has.
Would they be willing to pay for half of it?
Right.
If we pay the installation and then half of the annual, what businesses would be willing to pay the other half?
Right.
Because
Balance.
that to me is really an incentive and understanding, your business community is attractive, it's safe. Businesses wanna be there, consumers wanna be
Kind
there.
of like,
Question, what about the on and off ramps for our interstates? Is there anything?
They're listed in this proposal.
Uh-huh.
She cannot, or Flock cannot put anything on the ramp itself, but they can put it right there
Mhm.
on 54 at the ramp, but it can't be on the ramp.
So we can't partnership with the state or something and add.
Well, that's what he
because,
said in the
you know,
permit process.
I
They
mean,
don't pay for it.
I mean, that would be something I would think that every county would be willing to do for their portion of the
Well,
interstate.
I'll just turn it back
whatever.
over to staff and say, let's come up with something that's a little bit more specific, and then pick it apart. Pick up Brookwood, because I think that's us, and we need to meet with those folks and solve that problem in the back anyway, but we just haven't done it. Now, we told the HOA will help, but that's 5 property owners in the back, private property, plus an HOA that has to agree. We technically don't have the ability on our own, we gotta have their help. And the other ones where it's not so much street related, but the areas where you got your hotspots, let's just prioritize them. Say, okay, Reynolds, problem, right? Maybe Walmart's next, but Walmart has its own little camera system right
They
there.
do, in fact, it's called Lot Cop, and I inquired about Lot Cop with Flock, and it sounds like there might be a competitor kind of issue there.
So it may
It
be
does not
cheaper.
do what Flock does by any means,
Oh,
Okay.
but it's just an eye in the sky. It's a pretty nice camera system, but it's not they have no access to what we call hot files, stolen cars, wanted people, stuff like that.
And how good is the Zoom? Years and years ago, we set up, right here in the parking lot across the street, we set up one of those elevated towers.
Scissor arms.
And we took, the visual camera and saw how far we could look with it, I mean, it was a long
Sure.
ways, and very clear. So I'm just curious, if we set something up more toward 54 for Walmart, would we be able to, would it capture enough visual where we could expand that video screen to see car tags
Well,
and things like that?
I think all that is you get what you pay for.
Right.
Sure, there's cameras that you could mount in something like that. I don't know the price. But we have issues with merchants, we try to get video from merchants for robberies, and it's a 10 feet away kind of, the camera systems are horrible, but again, you get what you pay for and stuff like that.
Well, we'll let you guys decide, but just give us some order, and maybe we just pick off what we feel like we can absorb, and we'll pick off the others as time allows, right? We don't have to do it all in a day.
Sure.
Any, Ms. Knight, questions?
No.
Ms. Dean?
I think, reaching out to the business sector as well, that's,
Agreed. Ms. Van? Ms. Clark?
It's a nice system, I mean, it's good to have, but, we'll wait a little bit until we're comfortable with money.
We're all good. Thanks. We're gonna catch three more. Val, you wanna tell us the new businesses in the city?
So we have a few, the Backyard Butcher, that was a tent meat sale around the mall. So they got a temporary business license, so they left. Mako Collision, we have a new owner. SB Custom Jewelry, that guy opened his 5th business in the mall, including Great American Cookies, so pretty loyal guy. So try to see if he can open up something by Old Town maybe.
The district?
Yes, the district. And the Work It Pole Studio, like exercise.
Did you have to work hard to get that one?
This is a dance class. And Coin Store, they opened that inside of Namde Moon. Rock Spring Baptist Church, they're located inside of Scott Funeral Home. And then Supreme Mobile has new phone accessory business in the mall.
And at Rock Springs, that's the former church people we bought. Is that Tom Lehman retired though?
Okay.
so they're no longer in the building?
Oh, I mean, that's you're talking about something else. I'm talking about the people that own the church,
Okay.
not the sanctuary that's meeting.
Okay.
Believers Baptist.
On the Easter egg hunt, did the attorney decide to continue to hold it at City Hall, or is he gonna hold it somewhere else?
Hold it at City Hall. It's easier to.
Easy enough. And then you see potholes on Lake Harbor. and
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure everybody knows, we see them, we're falling into them. We're working with the state to get that resolved.
Yes. All right.
Quick question, can we, the events, can we get those on the calendar with the dates and stuff, so some of us who have short term, like John and I.
I'll have one of my personalities contact you. All right, you want to take a couple minute break, get a cup of coffee real quick, go to the restroom, we'll start the council meeting right after that.